When she first joined the company, everything felt too big for her. The building was huge, filled with glass walls, busy hallways, and confident employees who seemed to know exactly what they were doing. She was the only one who kept checking her watch, wiping her palms on her bag, and reminding herself to breathe normally. It wasn't her first job, but it was the most important one she ever had. She wanted to do well. She wanted people to see her as capable. And most of all, she wanted to prove to herself that she belonged here. On her very first morning, she hurried down the hallway, trying to find the conference room for the orientation session. She was so focused on the paper in her hand that she didn't notice the wet floor sign right in front of her. She slipped a little, caught her balance, and then heard a gentle voice behind her. "Careful there. These floors can surprise people early in the morning." She turned and saw a man holding a mop. He had a calm expression on his face, as if he had seen hundreds of people almost fall here before. She tried to laugh it off, even though her cheeks were burning. She apologized and stepped aside, letting him finish his work. He didn't make her feel embarrassed at all. Instead, he spoke kindly, telling her that the first day nerves were normal, and that everyone had once felt the same. His tone was warm, almost comforting, as if he understood exactly how hard it was for someone new to fit into an unfamiliar environment. She thanked him quietly and rushed to her orientation, but his words stayed in her mind longer than she expected. Throughout the day, everything felt chaotic. There were forms to sign, introductions to make, and instructions to memorize. People talked fast, walked fast, and expected her to understand fast. By the time her lunch break came, she felt like sinking into her chair and not moving for the next hour. But the cafeteria was full, and she ended up walking back into the hallway where she had almost slipped earlier. There he was again, placing some fresh supplies on his cart. He noticed the tired look on her face and smiled without asking any questions. Somehow, that simple smile felt like the most reassuring thing she had seen all day. She hesitated for a moment but then walked closer. Maybe she wanted a moment to breathe. Maybe she just wanted to hear a calm voice after a morning of rushing. Or maybe she simply felt safe around him without understanding why. He wiped his hands and said, "First day already got you exhausted." She laughed a little. "It's more intense than I expected." "Give it a week," he said softly. "You'll learn more from watching people than from anything they tell you in training." She liked the way he talked. Simple words, but they made sense. He didn't speak like someone who worked at the bottom of the company. He spoke like someone who observed the world very carefully. They talked for a few minutes, nothing personal, nothing deep, but enough to make her feel lighter. When she walked away, she felt more relaxed than she had since morning. Over the next week, she kept seeing him in different parts of the building. He was always working, always quiet, always focused on whatever task was in front of him. But whenever she walked by, he would nod or smile or say something small that made her day feel a little less heavy, that it became a routine without her realizing it. She would go to the cafeteria, grab her lunch, and somehow end up in the hallway near him. Sometimes they talked only for a minute or two. Sometimes they talked longer, especially when he was restocking supplies and had a moment to pause. She realized that she looked forward to seeing him more than she looked forward to the lunch itself. He wasn't talkative, but when he did speak, he always said something thoughtful. She noticed he had a very calm way of understanding people. He could tell when she had a tough morning or when she was feeling extra stressed with a new task. He never asked too many questions, yet he always said exactly what she needed to hear. It felt strange how could someone she barely knew understand her mood better than people who sat right next to her. Sometimes she wondered about his life, but she didn't want to ask too many personal things. Still, she learned little pieces over time. He worked early mornings and late afternoons. He knew every floor, every corner, every type of person who worked there. He had been in the company longer than most of the managers. She once joked that he probably knew more than the people running the place. He just smiled, as if he knew something she didn't. She found herself watching how others treated him. Some said hello, some ignored him. A few treated him with the kind of casual disrespect people often show to workers they consider below them. She hated that. She hated more when he pretended not to notice, but he didn't seem bothered. He carried himself with a dignity that didn't depend on anyone's approval. He worked with care, whether someone appreciated him or not. She admired that deeply. One afternoon she saw him help an older employee who had dropped a whole stack of documents. He didn't laugh or roll his eyes like a few passing colleagues did. He simply bent down, gathered the papers, and offered a few encouraging words. The older employee thanked him with a trembling voice. Watching that small exchange made something warm rise in her chest. That kind of kindness was rare. She realized something else too. When he talked, He used words that sounded wiser than someone in his position would typically use. It made her curious. How did a janitor speak with such maturity and insight? She didn't ask, though. She didn't want to make him uncomfortable or seem like she was judging him by his job. Their conversations slowly grew longer. She started sharing things about her work, how she struggled to understand certain tasks, how she felt left behind when others seemed to move faster, and how she doubted whether she deserved this job at all. He always listened carefully, giving small but meaningful advice. Sometimes he would say something simple like, "You're doing fine. Stop being so hard on yourself." Other times he gave deeper thoughts, reminding her that people show confidence even when they're scared inside. He reminded her that success is built quietly, not loudly. The more she talked to him, the more she felt connected to him. He wasn't like other men she had met. He didn't try to impress her. He didn't pretend to be something he wasn't. He didn't flirt, didn't brag, didn't compete with anyone. He simply existed with a quiet strength that felt peaceful. One day, she saw him eating alone near a small service door. He didn't sit in the cafeteria like others. Perhaps he preferred the quiet. She sat down a little distance away, not wanting to intrude, but also not wanting to leave. When he saw her, he didn't seem surprised. He simply nodded and offered her half of a sandwich he had bought too much of. She didn't take it, but she smiled at the gesture. Something about that moment felt simple and pure, like they shared an unspoken understanding. Later that night, she thought about him more than she expected to. She wondered why someone like him, who seemed so intelligent and grounded, chose this kind of job. She wondered what story lay behind that calm smile. She wondered why he looked at people as if he saw far more than they realized. But she didn't judge him. She respected him, truly respected him, not just out of politeness. She felt safe around him, something she didn't feel often. She started looking forward to seeing him every day, even if only for a few minutes. What she didn't know was that the man she admired for his simplicity carried a truth that could change everything. A truth she absolutely couldn't imagine. A truth that would one day shake the entire building. But for now, she only knew him as the quiet man with the mop, the kind voice, and the peaceful eyes. And that was enough to make her heart slowly lean toward him without her noticing. As the weeks passed, her connection with the quiet janitor grew in ways she didn't expect. Their small conversations turned into longer ones, and their short greetings became moments she looked forward to during her busy day. Work still felt overwhelming sometimes, but knowing she would see him made it easier. His presence had become something steady in a world that often felt chaotic. She didn't know how it started, but she began noticing little things about him. The way he stepped aside politely even in a crowded hallway. The way he quietly fixed broken items before anyone even asked. The way he treated everyone the same, whether they were a top manager or a new intern. It wasn't dramatic or loud, just small, consistent gestures that revealed the kind of person he truly was. One afternoon, after a particularly stressful meeting, she walked out of the conference room feeling drained. Her manager had given her more work than she could handle, and the pressure of proving herself felt heavier than before. She leaned against the wall, trying not to let the frustration show on her face. That was when she heard his calm voice behind her. "Rough day." She didn't even need to answer. He could probably read her expression clearly. She nodded, trying to force a smile, but her eyes felt tired. He didn't say much at first. Instead, he stepped closer and handed her a small bottle of water he had on his cart. "Drink," he said gently. "Sometimes the mind just needs a pause." She thanked him and took a sip. The water was cool, and somehow, it made her feel a bit more grounded. They stood silently for a moment. Then she found herself telling him what happened in the meeting. She spoke about the new tasks, the deadlines, the expectations she wasn't sure she could meet. She didn't know why she was opening up so much, but it felt natural with him. He listened patiently, not interrupting even once. When she finished, he spoke softly. "You don't have to be perfect. You just have to keep going. Most people around you are also pretending they know what they're doing." His words made her laugh quietly. He was right. People acted confident, but no one really had everything figured out. The way he said it made her feel she wasn't alone in this after all. That moment created a deeper bond between them, something unspoken yet powerful. One day, she saw something that surprised her. She was heading toward the elevator when she noticed him standing near a manager who looked upset. The manager complained loudly about some mistake in the cleaning schedule, blaming the janitor for something he clearly didn't do. The tone was disrespectful, almost hostile, but the janitor didn't react. He didn't raise his voice or defend himself aggressively. He just explained calmly, offered a solution, and even apologized for something that wasn't his fault. Watching that made her chest tighten. She admired his patience, but she hated the way some people treated him. He deserved more respect than anyone in that building later. When she met him in the hallway, she said quietly, "You didn't deserve to be spoken to like that." He shook his head with a small smile. "People speak from their own stress, not from who I am. It's fine." "It's not fine," she insisted. He looked at her, then not with sadness, but with a kind of maturity she rarely saw in people. "I learned a long time ago that you don't lose anything by staying calm. Pride doesn't feed you. Anger doesn't help you. Peace does." His words stayed with her long after he left. She realized again that he wasn't an ordinary person. The way he saw the world was different, quiet yet wise. She found herself respecting him even more. One Friday afternoon, after she finished her work earlier than expected, she decided to sit in the small outdoor garden just behind the main building. It was a quiet spot where few employees ever came. As she sat on the bench, enjoying the fresh air, she heard footsteps. She looked up and saw him pushing his cleaning cart toward the garden entrance. She waved him over, and he looked slightly surprised, but walked toward her anyway. "You take your break here?" he asked. "Sometimes," she said. "It's peaceful." He nodded as he placed his cart near the wall and sat on the opposite end of the bench. They didn't talk at first. Instead, they just watched the leaves move in the soft breeze. It was a kind of calm she hadn't experienced in a long time. After a few minutes, she asked him something she had wondered for weeks. "You've been working here a long time, right?" He nodded. "Many years. How come you never wanted a different position?" His eyes moved toward the sky for a moment before he answered. "Sometimes, people assume a job represents your value, but a job is just a job. What matters is how you live, how you treat others, and whether you sleep peacefully at night." She paused, realizing he meant every word. It wasn't an excuse. It was his philosophy. "But don't you want more?" she asked softly. He smiled a little. "I already have more than I need." She stared at him, curious yet confused. His answer didn't match the life she saw. He lived simply. He wore the same uniform every day. He worked long hours without complaining. If he had more, where was it? Before she could ask further, he gently changed the topic, asking about her weekend plans. They talked for a while longer until he had to go back to work. When he left, she remained on the bench, thinking about his words. That night, she realized something important. She wasn't just fond of him anymore. She was starting to fall for him, not in a dramatic, sudden way, but in a slow, steady way that felt real. He made her feel seen, heard, understood. His presence made her days easier. His kindness warmed her heart. His wisdom impressed her more than anything else. But the thought made her anxious too. Could she really like someone who people often ignored or looked down on? Would people judge her if they found out? Would they laugh? Would they understand? She didn't know, but she also knew her feelings weren't something she could stop. And deep down, she hoped that maybe, just maybe, he felt something too. A few days later, she got her answer in the most unexpected moment. She was working late on a project when the lights on her floor flickered slightly. Most employees had already left. The silence felt heavy. As she stood up to stretch, she heard someone enter the hallway. She peeked outside and saw him, pushing his cart and humming a soft tune. She walked toward him and leaned against the wall. "What are you doing here this late?" He looked up from his cart. "Night shift. They needed someone to cover." She nodded, then hesitated. Her heart beat a little faster than usual. She knew she wanted to tell him something but didn't know how to begin before she could speak. He looked at her in a way he hadn't before, gently, warmly, almost knowingly. "You work too hard," he said quietly. "You should take care of yourself too." She felt her cheeks warm. "And you worry too much about me," she said softly, then immediately regretted how revealing that sounded. But instead of reacting with surprise, he smiled in a way that made her heart skip. "Someone has to," he said. Those simple words hit her deeply. For a moment, they just stood there, watching each other in silence. The hallway felt smaller, the air a little warmer, and the space between them seemed to disappear. She didn't know what this meant or what would happen next. But she knew one thing, clearly this wasn't just friendship anymore. Over the next days, they grew even closer. Their conversations became more personal. He began sharing little pieces about his life, not everything, but enough to show trust. She learned he had faced hardships, made sacrifices, and learned resilience the hard way. He carried quiet strength, the kind that came from survival, not from privilege. But even with those small details, there was still something about him she didn't understand. Something he never talked about, something he kept hidden behind his calm smile. And soon, she would discover the truth, something that would shock her, shake her, and change everything she thought she knew about him. because the man she was slowly falling in love with wasn't just a janitor, he was something far more surprising. The next few days at the company felt strangely different for her. Before, she used to walk past the janitorial staff without really paying attention, but now she found herself noticing the small things they did, the things most people never even thought about. She watched the older man mop the same lobby floor with steady patience, as if taking care of the place brought him quiet happiness. She noticed how the younger janitor always smiled at employees even when he was tired, and she noticed the man she had met in the hallway how he didn't just clean, he paid attention to people. But even though she tried not to think too much about him, his face kept returning to her mind. His calm voice, his warm smile, the way he had spoken to her as if they were equals, not strangers from different parts of society. It felt refreshing, almost comforting. At the same time, she couldn't shake the confusion. Why had he been cleaning alone so late? And why had she felt so instantly connected to him, like she had known him for months instead of minutes? It was the kind of feeling she wasn't used to. She had always lived a simple, quiet life. Work home, work again. She didn't talk much to others unless she had to. Yet one conversation with a janitor she barely knew had left her thinking for days. She scolded herself more than once for it. She kept reminding herself that she didn't even know his name. She didn't know anything about him. Maybe he was married. Maybe he had a family. Maybe she was imagining a connection that wasn't even there. But the strange truth was that she had never felt something like this before. So she let herself hold on to the memory just a little longer, not because she expected anything, but because the kindness she saw in his eyes had affected her deeply. One evening, when she left work a little later than usual, she saw him again. This time he was cleaning the large glass doors near the exit. She almost walked past, pretending she didn't see him, because she didn't want to look foolish or too eager. But he looked up at the exact moment she stepped forward, and their eyes met again. "Long day?" he asked, giving her the same soft smile he had given her the first time. She nodded. "Yes, a lot to do." He held the door open for her, and she stepped outside, waiting for the cool breeze to calm the nervous flutter in her chest. She didn't want the moment to end so quickly, so she turned back to him. "You work late often?" she asked. "Sometimes," he replied. "Some things are easier to do when the building is quiet." There was a gentleness in his tone, as if he understood the unspoken feelings behind her question. She wanted to talk more, but she didn't know what to say. Before she could think of something, he pointed to the night sky and said, "Look at that." She followed his gaze. The moon was almost full, glowing softly through a thin layer of clouds. The city lights below flickered like small stars of their own. "It's nice, isn't it?" he said. "It is," she agreed, surprised at how peaceful the moment felt. It was strange how easy it was to talk to him, even about something as simple as the sky. She didn't feel judged or rushed. She didn't feel like she had to impress him. For the first time in a long while, she felt understood. They stood there for a moment longer. Then he asked, "Do you take the bus home?" She nodded, and he pointed toward the bus stop ahead. "It's not safe to walk alone at night. Make sure you don't wait there alone for too long." His concern warmed her heart in a way she didn't expect. She nodded again, grateful for the small moment they had shared. As she walked toward the stop, she turned back once. He was still watching to make sure she reached safely. When she waved softly, he lifted his hand in return. It felt like a quiet promise that he cared. The next day, she found herself hoping she would see him again. She didn't want to appear desperate, but she also didn't want to ignore the feeling growing inside her. However, hours passed, and she didn't see him anywhere. Not in the lobby, not in the hallways, not in the cleaning closet. By the time her shift ended, she felt slightly disappointed, even though she tried to tell herself it didn't matter. On her way out, she overheard two employees talking near the elevator. "The owner is coming tomorrow morning," one of them said. "The owner? Here really?" The other replied, "Yes. He's been checking the company branches quietly these days." She didn't pay too much attention. The company changed hands years ago, and the new owner never made public appearances. No one even knew what he looked like. People had only seen his signature on documents. Some said he was young, others said he was old. Some believed he lived abroad. There were so many rumors that no one could keep track anymore. The next morning the building buzzed with stress. Employees cleaned their desks, managers double-checked reports, and security guards kept walking in and out of the main lobby. Everyone expected a strict, formal figure to walk in any moment. She didn't expect much. She didn't like the pressure around these big visits, so she stayed focused on her tasks. Around mid-morning, she was carrying a stack of papers to the meeting room when she saw a small group entering the lobby. The guard stood straighter. The managers rushed forward. Cameras flashed. Whispers spread from one corner to another. "That must be him," someone whispered. She didn't look too closely. She kept walking, but before she turned the corner, she glanced back and froze. Her heart skipped. The man walking among the group looked familiar. Too familiar. For a moment she thought her mind was playing tricks. But no, she recognized him instantly. It was him, the janitor. The man who had opened the door for her. The man who had talked to her under the night sky. The man who had made her feel seen when no one else had. But he was not wearing the uniform now. Instead, he wore a calm, confident expression, a tailored suit, and a presence that made the entire building turn. Silent, she felt her breath catch in her throat. As the truth hit her, he wasn't a janitor at all. He was the owner, the same owner everyone had been talking about, the same owner who kept his identity hidden, the same owner whose decisions shaped the future of the company. And the quiet, humble man she had talked to was that person. She stood there, almost frozen, not knowing whether to hide or approach him. She felt embarrassed at the thought of how casually she had spoken to him. What if she had said something wrong? What if he thought she was foolish for not recognizing him? And worst of all, what if he thought she only showed interest because of who he really was? But he didn't ignore her. He looked her way. Their eyes met just like before, and the moment he saw her, his expression softened, and a small smile spread across his face, very similar to the one he had given her during their first meeting. A wave of warmth washed over her. He recognized her, not as an employee, not as someone in the crowd, but as the woman he had talked to when no one else was around. He politely ended a conversation with the managers and walked toward her. The entire staff watched with wide eyes, whispering and guessing what was happening. She stood still, unsure of what to do. When he reached her, he lowered his voice and said, "Good morning. I'm glad to see you." Her heart raced. She didn't know what to say. The words caught in her throat. I didn't know," she whispered. He smiled gently. "I know, and that's why I came to talk to you." Before she could respond, one of the managers hurried over. "So, the meeting room is ready," the manager said nervously. He nodded, then turned back to her with the same warm expression. "I'll find you later," he said softly, and then he walked away. She stood there, stunned, as everyone around her whispered in shock, and for the rest of the day, her heart beat in a mixture of fear, confusion, and something she didn't want to name yet, because deep down, she knew everything was about to change. The whole building felt different after that moment. Even though she tried to continue her day normally, her mind kept going back to what she had seen. The man she thought was a quiet janitor was actually the owner of the entire company. She replayed every conversation they had shared, the hallway, the doorway, the moment under the night sky, and each memory felt heavier now, like it carried a secret she didn't know existed. She kept asking herself why he had chosen to hide his real identity, why he had worn a janitor uniform instead of a suit, why he had worked late at night cleaning floors when he could have been sitting in a big office giving orders. Nothing made sense, but one thing was clear: he wasn't just a quiet man doing a simple job. There was more to him, much more. For the rest of the morning she avoided going anywhere near the lobby. She didn't want to run into him again, not while she still couldn't control her thoughts. She felt embarrassed, confused, and strangely nervous. Her heart kept beating fast every time she remembered the way he had smiled at her before walking to the meeting room. It was the same warm smile he had given her when she didn't know who he truly was. That made her even more confused. Some of her co-workers whispered about the moment they had seen him walk toward her. One asked her what he had said. Another joked that she must know him personally. She shrugged everything off, pretending she had no idea what they were talking about. She didn't want anyone to guess what she was feeling. She didn't even fully understand her own feelings yet. By lunchtime, she finally stepped outside, hoping the fresh air would calm her. She sat on a bench near the corner of the building, taking small bites of her food while her mind raced. She told herself 100 reasons why she should forget everything. He was the owner, she was just an employee. They lived in different worlds. Their paths should never cross. And even if they did, she shouldn't imagine anything more. She took a deep breath and looked up at the sky, telling herself that she would just stay quiet, keep to herself, and avoid unnecessary attention. But fate had different plans. As she stood up to return inside, she saw him walking out of the main door with two managers beside him. They were talking about some construction work on the upper floors. The managers were trying to impress him with long explanations, pointing at papers and showing diagrams, but he didn't seem very interested. Instead, his eyes scanned the area until they landed on her. Her breath caught. The managers continued talking, unaware that he was no longer paying attention. He politely nodded at them, then said he needed a moment. The two men stepped back and waited near the entrance while he walked toward her. When he reached her, he spoke in a gentle tone, the same tone he had used with her before he revealed himself, without any authority, without any distance. Just simple kindness. I didn't want our conversation from yesterday to end like that, he said softly. She lowered her eyes for a moment, unsure how to respond. I'm still trying to understand everything. I know, he replied. Take your time. There was a calm patience in his voice that made her chest tighten. He wasn't rushing her. He wasn't acting superior. He wasn't standing like a man used to being obeyed. He was standing like someone who genuinely cared how she felt. After a moment, she gathered the courage to ask the question that had been bothering her. Why were you wearing the uniform that day? Why were you cleaning? He smiled, not in a proud or dramatic way, but in a quiet, thoughtful way. I didn't start as the owner, he explained. This company was passed down to me, but before I made any decisions, I wanted to understand how everything really worked. Not from behind a desk, but from the ground. So I spent months learning each job quietly: security, cafeteria, maintenance, cleaning. I wanted to see the things that don't show up in reports. She looked at him with surprise. She didn't expect such an honest answer. She didn't expect a man in his position to go through so much effort just to understand his employees better. But why not tell anyone? She asked. Because people behave differently when they know who you are, he replied. I wanted to see who actually cared, who worked with honesty even when no one was watching, and I wanted to meet people without them thinking about my position. She nodded slowly, understanding more now. In that moment, her respect for him grew even stronger. He wasn't like the strict owners she had heard about in other companies. He wasn't someone who sat far away from reality. He was someone who wanted to experience everything firsthand. There was a short silence between them, but it wasn't uncomfortable. The wind blew gently, and a leaf drifted across the ground. He watched her quietly, giving her space to speak if she wanted to. You must think I'm foolish, he said finally, her voice low. I talk to you like I talk to a friend. I didn't even know who you were. He shook his head. No, that's the part I liked the most. She looked up at him, her eyes widening in surprise. You talk to me like a person, he continued. Not like someone trying to impress me. Not like someone who wanted something. You were just yourself. And that's rare. His words sent warmth through her chest. She didn't know what to say. She wasn't used to praise. She wasn't used to someone noticing her like this, not for her work, not for her appearance, but for her sincerity. After a moment, he glanced toward the entrance where the managers waited and said quietly, I have one more meeting, but if you don't mind, can we talk again later? She nodded, unable to trust her voice. He gave her a soft smile before walking back into the building. The rest of the day felt unreal. She kept replaying the conversation in her head, each moment making her feel a mixture of happiness and nervousness. She didn't know where things were going, and she didn't want to assume anything, but she couldn't deny that she felt something strong, something she had never felt before. Later in the afternoon, she was sorting files at her desk when she heard a soft knock on the partition. She turned, and there he was again, standing quietly so he wouldn't draw attention. Do you have a minute? He asked. She nodded, and they walked to a quiet corner near the windows where no one usually went. The sunlight filtered through the glass, creating a warm glow on the floor. He leaned lightly against the window frame, looking almost relaxed, not like a man running an entire company. I know today must have been overwhelming, he said gently, and I don't want to make anything harder for you. She shook her head slowly. I'm just surprised. I never imagined you were someone so important, he smiled. Importance doesn't change the person inside. She looked at him for a long moment, and for the first time, she saw him as two people at once, the humble man who cleaned hallways and the powerful owner who managed everything. But, more than that, she saw a human being who wanted to be understood beyond titles. He took a breath and then spoke carefully, choosing his words with sincerity. I want to get to know you better, not as the owner and employee, not because of work, just as to people who met by accident and felt something real. Her heartbeat grew fast again. She felt her hands tremble slightly. She didn't know how to respond. She had never imagined someone like him would feel something for someone like her. She felt small, simple, ordinary, yet he looked at her as if she mattered. You don't have to answer right now, he added quickly. Take your time. I don't want you to feel pressured. She shook her head gently. I would like that too. I don't know where it will go, but I want to try. His expression softened in relief. It was clear that he wasn't used to showing vulnerability, yet in front of her, he wasn't hiding anything. That's enough for me, he said with a warm smile. They talked a little longer about simple things, everyday things. He told her about how he had learned to fix machines with the technicians, She told him about her childhood dreams that never worked out. They both laughed softly at small stories. It felt natural, easy, almost magical. Before leaving, he said, "Let's take things slowly, step by step." She nodded, and for the first time that day, she felt a sense of calm settle over her. As she walked home that evening, she felt lighter, almost as if she were floating. She didn't know what the future held, but she knew one thing clearly. The simple janitor she had met in the hallway had changed her life in a way she never expected, and the owner of the company, the man with two identities, seen something in her that went deeper than titles or status. Their story was just beginning.